tonight. We're so excited you could be here with us, and our partners, Kaitlyn and Liz over at the Canadian Children's Literacy Foundation, who are great at doing this content for us tonight, because we're going to do the intro and we're going to turn it over to them. I'm also joined tonight by my colleague Suzanne Schlechte from the Canadian Child Care Federation, and we're going to do a bit of a welcome, Suzanne and I, and then we're going to throw it over to Kaitlyn and Liz, and they're going to take over with this content that you guys have all signed on to learn more about, and I'm so excited you're here. What else? Oh, the certificates. I know everybody wants to know about those. The certificates are auto-generated from the platform, and they're sent out to everyone who attends the live webinar event. And just so you know, I know sometimes in the past we've had a bit of issue with maybe 4 or 5 people looking on one computer. You each need to be registered individually, because the registration is free. We need to see the separate names in order for the certificates to be sent out. We unfortunately can't send out certificates to a number of people afterwards, because we really don't know if they were there or not, so it's not really fair to the rest. And they will be sent out within 48 hours from the platform of the live event. So by the end of the week, you'll be seeing that, and it comes as a separate email. And then we'll always send a follow-up email that, you know, have some additional resources and that type of thing from our hosts and ourselves, just in case there's any more information we wanted to share. So I think that's all for me. I'm going to turn it over to you, Suzanne, and I'm going to be here in the background and come on and help at the end, or if there's any questions going on or technology. So you can put things into the question. If you go up to the question box and click on that, that's where you can insert your comments or questions or concerns that you have, even about the technology during the webinar. So over to you, Suzanne.
Okay, thank you, Robin. I just am going to get my slideshow going here. Ha. Okay. Okay, can everybody see this? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Okay, fantastic. So I'd like to start tonight with a land acknowledgement. I'm so glad everybody is here. And after that, I've got a couple more slides to show you, and we will get things going. But starting with the land acknowledgement, as we gather together on this virtual platform, we acknowledge that we are each joining from the ancestral or unceded lands of Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. The Canadian Child Care Federation's office is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We honor their enduring connection to the land, waters, and culture, and we recognize all Indigenous peoples who have lived on and cared for these lands since time immemorial, those who live here now and the 7 generations to come. We recognize the harms and injustices of the past and the ongoing impacts of colonization. We affirm our commitment to truth, reconciliation, and meaningful collaboration with Indigenous communities. As Indigenous peoples have always done, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and contributions of all who call it home. We invite you to take a moment of reflection, and if you feel comfortable, to share the name of the Indigenous lands you are joining from in the Q&A box or the chat box. Let us honor the many peoples and places across these lands and consider the tangible steps each one of us can take to move forward in a spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. So the CCCF is made up of many affiliates. And here's the map of Canada that lists our different affiliate organizations. Tonight, we would like to acknowledge the Manitoba Child Care Association and speak a little bit about them. So their mission is to advocate for quality system of childcare, to advance early learning and childcare education as a profession, and to provide services to their members. Their vision is to promote and support an exceptional and inclusive early learning and childcare system by fueling members to be proud and excited to belong to a progressive, respected profession. And I'll bet we have a lot of people from Manitoba here. Hello to you. So you probably already know how they ran a 6-week campaign during the summer on quality. And during that time, they focused on the questions, what is quality? Why does it matter? The role of the educator, family as a part of quality, barriers to quality, inspiring action. And they also held the 24th Annual Directors Conference, Illuminating Paths of Leadership, in October. And another thing they did was they held the 6th Annual Pedagogical Institute, Reclaiming Care, the Sacred Work of Early Childhood. Important work for sure. And if you're interested in visiting their website, you can use the QR code, and these we can send these slides out and send a link so that you can access, or you can just do a search too. And if you're in Manitoba and you're not a member of the Manitoba Child Care Association, I highly suggest you look them up. And finally, I would just like to share a little bit about our outdoor play training course. It's quite a popular course, and a lot of people probably already know all about it. But for those of you that don't know, it's a 12-module course that integrates outdoor play theory and practice through examples and reflections on professional experiences and practice. The course can be completed at your own pace. It's accessible for it's open now, so there's a much longer time frame. You'll have a year to finish from the time you register. Each module takes approximately 3 hours to complete, and it includes an interactive content, slideshows, interactive graphics, and there are videos in there as well. At the end of each of the modules, you have the option to engage in self-reflective questions and an assessment activity. And once that's completed, you can, if you're not happy with the score that you have, you can do it again. And once all 12 modules have been successfully completed, you will receive a 45-hour professional development certificate from the Canadian Child Care Federation. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can email us after the webinar and just let us know. We're happy to help. Okay. And now Liz and Kaitlyn, I think it's over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We're really excited to have you here for this workshop. So if you've participated in one of our workshops before, you probably know that we love to hear from you. So we'll be inviting you to answer some questions and share your thoughts in the chat if you're able to throughout the workshop. We also want to invite you to write down some ideas on paper if you have some handy and you'd like to. So with that said, if you can just try to stay present with us throughout the workshop, we'd absolutely love to hear from you.
And sorry, Kaitlyn, before you start, I just want to remind people to use the question box, because the chat box actually only works with between the facilitators. So if you want to reach out to us with any comments or questions or concerns, or participating at all during the webinar, use the box at the top that has a little question mark inside it. It's a white box with a question mark inside it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, I can see everybody's questions here. Yeah, so before we get started, before we dive in, we're going to be using a platform called Mentimeter throughout today's session, just to make things a little bit more interactive for everybody. So it's a simple virtual tool that just lets you respond to questions, polls, prompts using your phone or your laptop. You don't need to download anything. All you have to do is just go to the website link that's shown on the screen there, enter the code, and then you'll be able to participate. So you can also use the QR code that's shown on the screen. And it's just a great way for us to gather your thoughts and make sure the session reflects your perspective. So I'm just going to give everybody a few minutes to get onto the website and put the code in. And if at any point in the workshop you miss this slide, don't worry, that little bar at the top that says join at menti.com with the code, it'll stay up for the entire workshop. So if you miss this, you can still access that code throughout the workshop. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how you can use storytelling and story acting to help build young children's language and literacy skills. We're so excited to be here with you, and we're really grateful to be partnering again with the Canadian Childcare Federation to make this workshop possible for all of you. My name is Dr. Kaitlyn Parks, and I'm a program specialist at the Canadian Children's Literacy Foundation, also known as CCLF. We're a national nonprofit that promotes and develops literacy initiatives, champions literacy partnerships across the country, and supports people like you in building strong literacy in homes, early learning spaces, and communities. And I have a PhD in developmental psychology from the University of Western Ontario, and I'm really excited to be here today with my colleague Liz, who I'll now let introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Liz Attisano. I also hold a PhD in developmental psychology, and I completed a postdoc at the School of Public Health Sciences at the University of Waterloo. And like Kaitlyn said, I'm really looking forward to diving into today's topic with all of you. So before we get into the content, we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the land we are working from in Toronto. So the Canadian Children's Literacy Foundation's office is located on lands that are covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Our work takes place on the traditional territory and the enduring home of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across the country now known as Canada. And core to our beliefs is that oral and written storytelling can contribute to honoring, respecting, and protecting the languages and cultures of Indigenous peoples who have lived here for millennia. We are committed to learning about the traditions and current realities of Indigenous peoples of this land. We strive to listen to and learn from Indigenous ways of nurturing literacy in children and to support those traditions and communities where we are invited to work together. So this evening, we're going to begin by exploring early literacy and also your role in supporting children's language and literacy development. Next, we're going to look at the Big Five, or the 5 foundational areas to help build strong early literacy skills. We're then going to dive into how to bring the Big Five to life through storytelling and story acting. And you're going to have the opportunity to reflect and see how these strategies can fit into your daily practice. And finally, we're going to take the time to reflect and recap what we've learned together this evening. So before we jump in, I just want to give everyone the opportunity to reflect on your current practice. These questions are really just for you, and there's no pressure to share right now. So you can think about what you're already doing to support children's language and literacy during play. And if you have a pen and paper, please feel free to write down some of your thoughts. So our first question that we have for you is, how do you help children learn and use language in your day-to-day work? How do you support children in telling their own stories during the day? This could be during play, transitions, at gathering time, really any time that a child shares an idea or an experience. And think about what opportunities do you give children to act out ideas or pretend. So think about through dramatic play, movement, or even just letting children take on roles during stories. All right, so keep those reflections in mind as we go on this evening. We're going to revisit them at the end of the webinar. So now we're going to discuss literacy and how it's represented in the early years. So when people hear that term early literacy, they often wonder if it's about explicitly teaching young children how to read. And as most of you may know, this is certainly not the case. Early literacy refers to the skills children need to learn before learning how to read. So while early schooling focuses on teaching children how to read, as they progress, they're going to need to read in order to understand and critically think about all the information that they're being exposed to. And that's why having that solid foundation in early literacy is so important because it sets that stage for all future learning. So you as early years educators can help babies and young children develop these skills and support their brain development by engaging in really loving interactions and creating a language-rich environment through singing, talking, reading, and sharing stories. So early literacy activities like singing, talking, reading, and sharing stories help children develop the skills which are foundational for learning how to read. And some of these skills include using words to describe things and to tell stories, learning the connection between the words we say and the words we actually see on a page, figuring out how books work, so how to turn the pages, which way's up, understanding that in languages like English and French, we read left to right, up to down, but that's different in other languages. And in the older years, it includes recognizing letters and knowing that they make the sounds that form words. So these early literacy activities or skills are so foundational for children to arrive to school ready to learn. And there has been lots of research on how the experiences in the early years can have a significant impact later on in life. So research has shown that a larger vocabulary size at age 2 leads to better literacy achievement in middle school. When children are read to every day, they hear 1.4 million words by age 5. And more verbal interactions at age 5 leads to better cognitive skills 10 years later. So this tells us that what you're doing now in the earliest years of a child's life really impacts them for the rest of their life. So you as early years educators play such a critical role in supporting young children's literacy development. And you're probably doing a lot of the things that contribute to children's language and literacy development already. And we're going to go over some very explicit ways that you can continue to do this, of which all that aligns with how children best learn language and literacy. So the goal here is to create learning opportunities for children that really give them that best possible future. And it all starts with early literacy. So we're going to focus on the 5 key areas that are essential for young children's language and literacy growth. And we're going to pass it over to Kaitlyn to get into those 5 key areas now.
Great, thanks, Liz. So the aim for the first half of this workshop is to really get into the why around early literacy. And part of that why is recognizing and understanding those 5 foundational areas that Liz just mentioned. So we call these the Big Five, and we'll be referring to them a lot during the rest of the workshop. The Big Five areas that are essential for successful reading and writing in the early years are talking and communicating, understanding, knowing how print works or print concepts, sounds and letters, and then exploring early writing. So let's talk a little bit more about what each one entails. Let's start with talking and communicating. This is all about conversations, talking with others, sharing ideas, and learning new words. We support this by having conversations, a meaningful back and forth, exchanges with children that introduce new words through everyday talk. What about understanding? This is what happens when children follow a story, respond to questions, or interpret what they see and hear. So open-ended questions during a read aloud can really support understanding. Next is knowing how print works or print concepts. And this includes recognizing that print has meaning like signs or menus. We can support this by pointing out print in the environment and involving children in handling books from a very, very early age. When we say sounds and letters, this involves hearing the sounds in words and connecting them to letters. So think rhyming games, clapping out syllables, or playing with letter sounds in really fun ways. Finally, we have early writing. This could be anything from scribbles to making shopping lists during pretend play, or eventually having them create their own stories and actually writing them out. So I just want to note that these are not things children need to master before they enter the formal school years, but rather things that we can naturally encourage through play and conversations early on. So in the next section, I'm going to ask you a few questions to get you thinking of your current practice. And to do this, we'll be using that platform that I mentioned earlier called Mentimeter. So for those of you who may have missed it at the start of this workshop, Mentimeter allows us to engage and respond to questions in real time. I can see, I think 177 of you are on there already. So you don't need to download anything. You can just go to the website mentioned here, enter that code, and then you'll be able to participate when we ask you questions. You can also scan the QR code, and I'll just give everybody another minute to get set up and ready to go. Great, I can see that more people are joining. So I'll move on. So I just want to introduce this scenario to you. So we're going to imagine that you're working with a child named Sam. Sam is brand new to your program and is currently an infant. Over time, Sam will grow into a toddler and eventually a pre-K learner in your setting. What we want you to do is think about how you could support Sam in building just one area of the big five. So you'll be able to share your ideas, like I said, in Mentimeter, but if you can't access it, that's totally okay. You can jot down notes or just think it through yourself. Sometimes it can be tricky to choose just one area, so let's walk through a quick example together. And for those of you who feel like you might leave the webinar, what you can do is you can open a new tab if you can, if you're on your laptop, or another tab on your phone, and you can join Mentimeter that way, and it won't make you leave the webinar. So I just want to go through a quick example of what this could look like if I chose one of the big five and I was thinking of how I could build that area with Sam as he went through my program. So let's say that I picked sounds and letters. How might I support this across the ages? So in infancy, I might start by using rhymes and songs with a lot of repetition, like ba, 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 up, up, up we go, to help Sam start tuning into the rhythm and the sounds of language. When he gets to be a toddler, I might play some sound games like what starts with s, or emphasize sounds during play, like Snake says slither, to start connecting sounds to letters a little bit more naturally. And then by pre-K, I could begin exploring print, pointing out letters in Sam's name, or playing games with magnetic letters, connecting these early sound skills to printed symbols. So that's just one example using sounds and letters. Now I want you to try. So try to choose a different area of the big five than the one that I picked. If you do want to pick sounds and letters, that's okay. You can build off of some of the ideas that I shared, but try to pick something new, and think about what you could do at each stage. So in infancy, toddlerhood, and pre-K, you can write your responses in Mentimeter, or like I said, think of them on your own. If you do find it too much to think at each stage, just think of the children you currently work with. Think of the age of the children you currently work with and come up with some ideas that way. So we want to give everybody a few minutes to reflect and share your thoughts in Mentimeter if you can. So for example, if you did pick talking and communication, what is maybe one or two ways that you could help build talking and communication in Sam when he's a baby? Picture cards. Yep. Echoing their language, absolutely. Using songs, sing some songs. Make your own mini stories. Yep. Use slow but full sentences, exactly. So if, for example, there's a toddler and they say the dog, you can expand on that. You can expand on that sentence. Yes, the dog went into the water. So you could really build their vocabulary that way if you pick talking and communication. For sounds and letters, definitely songs and music, reading books together, getting down on their level. So when it comes to things like print concepts, if you have, say, a book in your hand, right, and you get down on the child's level so that child can interact with that book, and maybe you're following along with your finger as you're reading the story, showing them that print carries meaning, those kinds of things. You can do that at any age, really. I'll support conversations where Sam can share thoughts, retell stories, and use complete sentences, helping him grow confidence. That's beautiful. I would use photos of him and his families to stimulate engagement, getting him to make sounds and build understanding. I think that that's so lovely. Connecting it back to the child's own experience is one of the best ways to build all areas of the Big Five. So I think that that's fantastic. Toy talk. I love that somebody said toy talk. If you were at our previous webinar, you know that we talked a lot about toy talk. So I think that that's amazing. Absolutely. Talk about what the toy is doing. Describe what the toy is doing. So that's going to really introduce new vocabulary while you're talking to the baby or to the child. These are all so good. All right. So thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts. You can keep sharing them in Mentimeter as we continue on. But right now, I'm just going to pass it over to Liz to go over how we can build the Big Five during storytelling and story acting.
Great, thanks, Kaitlyn. So storytelling and story acting are really natural next steps after reading aloud. So as I'm sure you already know, children love to retell stories, improvise new ideas, and bring characters and events to life through play and imagination. And as children grow, they start to get even more active. Acting out stories is really a fantastic way to help them deepen their understanding. In fact, movement during storytelling can actually support comprehension. So when children are free to move, gesture, dance around while listening and sharing, it really helps them process and engage with the story in a meaningful way. So if story time gets a little lively, it's okay. It's all part of their learning. So children can act out a book they just heard, or better yet, they can create and perform their own stories. So this activity directly connects to the 5 foundational areas of language and literacy that Kaitlyn just shared with us, but the benefits really extend beyond just language. Storytelling and story acting also validate children's ideas and their voices. It shows them that their thoughts, their creativity, and their contributions all matter. It also invites imagination, so children can explore new ways to express themselves and think about the world. It supports their emotional development, so acting out stories really gives them a safe space to share and explore their emotions. It encourages self-regulation, so children can take turns, follow storylines, and learn to cooperate, all of which builds that skill. It also promotes teamwork and positive peer interactions. So working together on a story or a performance really strengthens the social bonds and teaches collaboration. So now we're going to dive a little deeper into how this approach works in practice. So we're going to explore some strategies that you can use to really maximize the language and literacy opportunities that storytelling and story acting have to offer. So I keep mentioning the two, so let's break them down. So storytelling is when children come up with their own stories and you write them down for them. So it's all about capturing their imagination and creativity in their words. And for story acting is when children act out the stories that they've created without the need for props or costumes or any additional materials. It's all about children using their bodies and their voices to bring their own stories to life. So now we're going to take a quick look at the history and the person behind this approach, Vivian Paley. So Vivian Paley was a kindergarten teacher for over 35 years, and she really emphasized the importance of play in children's development and learning. So Vivian Paley believed that fantasy play really helps to connect all learning activities rather than switching back and forth between direct instruction and then free play. So her idea was to blend play into the curriculum in a way that encourages children's active participation and really allowing them to incorporate their own interests and their own ideas into learning.
All right, so remember the Big Five we talked about just a few moments ago? Let's go over how storytelling and acting can help grow those 5 key areas. So when you pick up a favorite book and you show the title and the author, or like I was mentioning earlier, maybe you're following along with your finger as you read and showing the child the print, you're helping them understand how print works. So that we read from left to right, and that words carry meaning, and that stories come from text on the page. So that's really building their concepts of print. So when you're reading a story together and you decide to maybe expand on it, or you have a child create their own story, you're doing all of these things. When you ask questions, talk about what's happening, or connect the story to their own experience, which somebody mentioned in the chat, these are all really, really great. So you're growing their vocabulary and their comprehension. And if you emphasize rhymes, repeat fun phrases, or draw attention to different sounds, you're also helping those children make sound letter connections and strengthening their phonological awareness skills. And when you invite children to tell or act out their own stories once they're old enough to do that, or add on to maybe their favorite and familiar ones, you're encouraging early writing, narrative skills, and you're deepening their understanding. So something as simple and joyful as reading and acting out stories can actually touch on all 5 of those areas that we've been mentioning in ways that feel playful, natural, and really engaging for young children. And it also doesn't require them to sit still, which I think is really important. So now I kind of want to go over what storytelling and acting can look like in different rooms. I know that some of you might be in an infant room, others might be working with toddlers or preschoolers, and of course, storytelling looks a little bit different at each stage. So let's walk through what that might look like in your setting. So with babies, storytelling is really about the experience of oral language. So you can take a simple story that you're reading with that child and build from it using songs, gestures, and sounds. In this situation, think of yourself as the main actor. So when you make animal noises, splash your hands like water, or use expressive faces, you're bringing language to life. Even mirroring a baby's coos and movement can be kind of storytelling. You're showing them that their sounds and actions matter, using board books, peekaboo, and simple cause and effect stories like up goes the ball, down it comes can help really build their early understanding of how stories work and how those key oral language skills can continue to build. Toddlers love to move and be part of the story, as I'm sure you all know. So again, you can build off a familiar favorite with that child and invite them to act out big motions. So maybe you could say stomp like the elephant, hop like a frog, or stretch big and tall like a tree. What you want to do is encourage them to say simple story words or maybe short sentences. So like doggy go or I run. Then you can expand on their words to really model full sentences and storytelling. So for example, yes, the doggy ran fast to catch the ball. So you're just expanding on what the child has said. And then by preschool, children are ready to take storytelling into their own hands. So you can invite them to dictate their own stories. You write down what they say, and then everyone can act it out together. And this is a really great way to build narrative skills, which helps children understand story structure, that each story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And at this stage, you can also introduce new vocabulary through stories that they already love, like the word cocoon in The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Using real storybooks to model, this makes it feel authentic and connected to what they already love. Then you can build off those stories too and have them create their own. So no matter what the age of the child that you're working with, storytelling and acting can be part of your day. It's all about meeting children where they're at and showing them that stories live everywhere, not just in books.
So now we're going to watch a video that shows what storytelling can look like in real time with a child. So we want to again preface this by saying that this child may look a little older than some of the children that you work with in your learning environments, and that's okay. So please feel free to imagine what this could look like with the children that you work with. And as you watch, please pay close attention to how the educator supports the child without taking over the story, and think about what is standing out to you. We're going to reflect on it together later afterwards. Kaitlyn, I don't think we can hear the audio.
I don't know how to do that. One second.
Sorry, everyone. A little technical difficulty.
I'm going to stop sharing for a sec.
I think when you go to share your screen, there's a option that asks about sharing your sound.
Yeah, okay, one second. Include media sound. Yes, thank you so much. Okay, I forgot to press that. Okay, can everybody see the screen now?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
You can see everything? Okay, let me know if you can hear it as well.
The blue whale
We're good.
is big. What else?
And he could do a backflip.
He could do a back flip.
And he could splash with people.
And he could splash with people.
And he shoot his water at the hole.
He shoots water out of the hole. Do you know the other name for the hole?
The hole is for the water.
Yeah, do you know the other name for it?
Spout.
Yeah, out of the, should we say spout?
Yeah, because spout is for, I like spout.
Yeah, he shoots water out of the spout. What else can you tell me about the blue whale?
He's the biggest one in the whole wide world.
He is the biggest?
In the whole wide world.
The biggest whale?
Yeah, in the whole wide world.
In the whole wide world. Can you tell me anything else about the blue whale?
Yes. And he's bigger to one airplane.
He is bigger than one airplane.
And he's bigger to 3 buses.
He is bigger than 3 buses.
And he's bigger to 4 pink elephants.
He's bigger than 4 pink elephants?
Yeah.
He is bigger than 4 pink elephants. Gregory, we have space for one more fact.
And then the blue whale, he's bigger to the house.
So is that the last sentence that you want to say? He's bigger than the house?
Yeah.
He is bigger than a house. Okay. Okay, let me read it back to you and you can see if you want to make any changes or add any more details. Okay. The blue whale is big. He could do a backflip and he could splash with people. He shoots water out of the spout. He is the biggest whale in the whole wide world. He is bigger than 1 airplane. He is bigger than 3 buses. He is bigger than 4 pink elephants. He is bigger than a house. What should we call this story?
A blue whale.
A blue whale. A blue whale. So will you do a backflip?
Yeah.
Okay. And will you splash? When you shoot water out of your spout?
Yeah, but maybe I could do a pretend backflip.
You could. A pretend one, yeah. So then do we need an airplane character?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Suhan.
Think you might like to do that?
Yeah.
And then we need 3 buses.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
And then we need 4 pink elephants.
Yeah.
I wonder
That's a lot.
It's a lot of characters, right?
Yeah.
4 pink elephants. And then we need a house.
Yeah.
Okay.
One house.
One house. Just one house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look,
Yeah, I see them.
free.
Great, thanks.
You look like a duck.
I know.
Thank you so much, Gregory. That was great. That video always makes me laugh. So now we just want to take a moment to reflect on the video we just watched. So for our first question is, what did you notice? What stood out to you in the way that the educator supported the child's storytelling? So was there a moment that you really liked and found effective? How patient she was. Yeah, she didn't rush him at all. She really just let him take the time and come up with it. She added to his ideas with descriptive words, repeating as she wrote the sentences down. And that's really important with that, showing them that print kind of conveys meaning and it's really important. So that was great. She didn't correct him. She liked that she only used his words. Yeah, it was his words on the page. She might have made sentences a little more grammatically correct, but it was his words, his ideas. Supportive, he was leading, repeated the words slowly and wrote it down, made sure that she was being descriptive. You guys are really killing it here. The way she said the words as she wrote them, she validated everything that she said. And then the one that I really like here is the new vocabulary. So the educator really prompted, I think his name was Gregory, for the word spout to help extend his vocabulary. So that was wonderful. Repeating his sentences. Yeah, something else that I liked is that she kind of turned the page for him too and told him like we have one more line left. So he didn't feel like he had to keep the story going. She gave her full attention. And I know that's really challenging in your settings, but it's still really nice to have that one-on-one time to be able to connect with the child, following his lead, calm and patient, uses different vocabulary. Yes, someone else brought up the spout. That was wonderful. We're on the same page. Very serious. Yeah, she took his ideas really seriously. It's a massive whale, bigger than 3 houses. And that's the story he wanted to tell. And she really respected that. And I thought that was wonderful. Yeah, patient, encouraged. Yeah, so that was great. So now let's think about the child. How did you think Gregory felt while sharing their story? So do you think it made him feel safe or exciting? Happy, respected, listened to, smart, validated, felt heard, powerful. Yes, exactly. Proud and heard, and he was so excited, really supported, wore his smile proudly. I love that. Interesting and fun, confident in his likes and his opinion. Yeah, exactly. Honored and important. And that expressed his ideas and comfortable. His ideas mattered and are respected. So yeah, you're really laying that foundation of building that child's like confidence too, right? Like you're a trusted adult in their life and you believe in them and their ideas. And it's something like that is such a small thing that you as educators can do to really boost that confidence, and the child will take that confidence with them for the rest of their lives. Felt like a skilled communicator. Ooh, I love that. That's excellent. This is wonderful. Allowed him to build his story. Yeah, this is great. And for our third question that we have is, can you imagine doing something like this in your learning environment? And what are some materials or things that you need to make this happen? Alternatively, what do you have that can make this easier, and what are some challenges that you need to overcome as well? Props for storytelling, you don't need props, but if you have some handy, like puppets or something, that could be nice. More staff, specifically trained. Yeah, staff for ratio and enough time. So I think that's important to think about. So what could we do? Maybe we have a couple of children tell their story together and we do that instead of having one child at a time. Maybe it's a collaborative effort. Asking for permission to write this child's story down. Yeah, maybe we ask the child, is it okay if you tell me a story and you can write it down? So yeah, I think staffing is a big thing. So I think thinking about how we can make this a collaborative process with maybe multiple children um, is something that you can think about and discuss with like your team members. Some colorful pens in case the child would love to add some colors. I think someone else in the chat here also wrote that they would love to see this illustrated. So maybe that's an activity too. The child tells the story, you write it down, and then on the back, the child illustrates their own story as well as acting it out. And then you can give that to the family afterwards as a keepsake. Absolutely. Concerns with our low and nonverbal kiddos. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe they can take part in the story acting if they choose to, and maybe they do it differently. So what does that look like in your learning environment? Yeah, talk with children at limited vocabulary. So smaller stories. Yeah, it doesn't need to take up the whole page. Maybe instead of a whole paper, we cut the paper so they don't feel like they need to tell this whole long story. Visual materials. So, yeah, maybe using a computer instead of paper as yourself struggle with spelling. Yeah, modify it as best as you see fit. Seems doable for sure. Mixed age group, I'll get the older ones to maybe write for the younger ones. If that's possible in your learning environment, that's a great opportunity. And if someone else here is writing something that resonates with you, write it down yourself and think about what that can mean for your learning environment. This is an opportunity for everyone to kind of learn from one another as well. I just did it today. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Like hearing and reading everyone's ideas has been wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing. So again, why is storytelling and story acting so valuable in early learning spaces? So whether you're already using this approach or thinking about trying it, it's important to understand what makes it such a powerful tool. So storytelling gives children meaningful opportunities to develop early literacy and writing skills, not in isolation, but in context through their own ideas. So it helps them to use and learn new vocabulary, understand how stories work, make the connections to print concepts, and see that writing is a way to share their thoughts and to communicate with others. And the best part is that storytelling and story acting supports every one of the big 5 areas that we've been talking about. It brings in talking and communicating, understanding, print concepts, sounds and letters, and early writing, all in one playful, engaging activity that allows children to move around. So while it's fun and meaningful for children, it's also setting them up with a strong foundation for future literacy success. Now we're going to pass it over to Kaitlyn to get into some strategies on how to do this.
Great. Okay, so now let's look at an easy guide for how you can support the big 5 when a child is telling you a story, or maybe when you're building off a story they already know and love. So we call these the cues strategies, and here's why. The C in cues stands for getting curious about print. So you want to invite the child to sit beside you while you write the story, just like the educator was doing in that video, and it helps make the experience feel special and introduces them to how print works. So you can see the picture of the story on the slide. The child's name is written at the very top. You can say something like, "This is your story. I'm writing your name at the top." If you're working with babies, you can sit beside them with the book and flip through the pages and run your finger across the text as you read the story to them. The U in cues stands for use, sound, and movement. So you want to encourage children to express their ideas in different ways. Multilingual children can express their ideas through gestures, facial expressions, and drawings during both storytelling and acting. This also applies to children who speak minimally, and younger children with limited language can also express ideas this way. That's totally okay. You can also feel free to play with different sounds to emphasize those sound letter connections in here. The E in Q stands for echo their words. So as the child tells their story, you want to write down what they say, just like the educator did. Depending on their age and their language skills, their story could be very rich and detailed, like Gregory's was, or it could be a little shorter and more scattered. That's okay. Either way, you can echo their words as you write and gently prompt with questions like, "What happened next?" or "Who else is in the story?" And remember, those coos and babbles count here too from little babies. So you can have back and forth with baby and elaborate on where their attention is in the story. And the S in cues stands for seek more. So after the story is finished, you want to read it back to the child. This is a great time to ask if there's anything else they'd like to add. You can mark the characters or roles in the story as you read, just like the educator did. She was circling the elephants and the house and the whale. You can underline them or circle them like shown in the story here on the slide, whichever works best for you. Then you can ask the child which role they'd like to play in the acting part. So if the story doesn't have many characters, you can certainly get creative. Think about including things like objects. So maybe there's cars or trees or houses that children can pretend to be. For babies and younger children who aren't yet sharing their own stories, you can still seek more by engaging with their interests and their cues. So pay attention to what they look at, what they reach for, or react to in the story. And these are ways of telling you what's meaningful to them. And of course, you want to thank the child for their story once they finish sharing it with you. It validates their ideas and builds confidence, just like we saw in Gregory after he was finished telling his story. So curious about print, use sound and movement, echo their words, and seek more. Now let's move on to what you can do to help build the Big Five while children are acting out the story. So the second half of this approach. We call these the C's strategies, and that's because S in C's stands for share more. So we want to encourage children to share more about how they might act out roles. For example, you might say, how do you pretend to bake cookies? Or what does swimming look like? For babies, you can share for them by narrating what they're doing. So you're waving your arms, or that looks like splashing in the water. The E in C's stands for elaborate on what you see. So as children act, describe their movements, or clarify parts of the story. For example, you could say, who's he in this part? Or she's diving into the water, or this must be when the monster arrives. So what this does is it really helps expand vocabulary. Essentially, you want to comment and elaborate on what's happening as children are acting out their stories. And for babies, you could describe what they notice or do. So you could say you're looking at the big truck, or the bear is going boom, boom, boom. The second E in C's stands for explore with descriptive words. So try to use really rich language to deepen their understanding of the story. For example, you could say, that's a little kitten hiding under a big bed. And you can do the same with babies and younger children too. And the last S in C's stands for support the ending. So you want to signal the end of the performance once they're finished acting out the story, or you're finished reading the book with the child if they're a little younger. And this can be honestly whatever you want. You might say, let's all take a bow, time to clap for the actors. And what this does is it just helps mark a clear celebratory end and gives closure for the children. For babies, you can end with a joyful routine like saying, all done, with a big smile. You can clap together, or maybe give a little gentle cheer. So just to, as a recap, the menu of strategies for story acting are share more, elaborate on what you see, explore with descriptive words, and then support that ending. So now that we've gone through the Q's and C's strategies, we want to put these into practice. So what I would love is for you to take just a few moments to think about how you could use some of these strategies in your own rooms. And we're going to use Mentimeter again for this part. So think about what's already worked well in your environment, or something new you might want to try maybe next week, and add your ideas under the age group that's most relevant to you. So if you work primarily with infants, think about how you might bring these strategies to life with them. Maybe through songs, gestures, shared book time. If you work with toddlers, think about how you could build on their growing language and curiosity. How can you echo their words, expand on what they say, and use playful storylines. And if you're in a pre-K room, consider how you can support children as they start telling their own stories, maybe through group storytelling, like some of you mentioned, acting out stories, or exploring new descriptive words together. And of course, if you work across different age groups or with all of these age groups, you're welcome to think about all three. This exercise is really just to get you thinking about a few ideas you might want to try in the next few days or weeks. So I'm just going to give everybody a moment to use Mentimeter if they did have the opportunity to join. And I just want you to think about how you could use some of the Q strategies in your own rooms. So remember, the Q's strategies are all about while the child is telling the story, or maybe you're sharing that story with the baby. And it involves getting them curious about print, using sound and movement, echoing their words, and seeking more. So how could you get them curious about print? Maybe how could you use different sounds while sharing a story, or listening to them share their own? So you could read along CD movement stories, yeah. With pre-K, saying what they are saying back to them with excitement, absolutely. Bring some puppets to grab their attention. Write few words that the child has shared and show them. This is great. An educator can ask if their painting or drawing has a story and then offer to scribe it for them. Absolutely. And then that would also bring in the writing component too for that child. Cite words, echo their words, and start to record their stories on paper. These are fantastic. Getting them to act out the story as you're reading, yep, and then encouraging that movement too is still going to help with comprehension, so that's amazing. Plain paper to kids and they'll draw their story and share it with the class. I love that. Find a story that they love and act them out. Give them all characters to act out. Yep, you can definitely build off of a favorite that your class loves, or depending on the time of the year. So Halloween's coming up, and I think someone mentioned that they picked a Halloween book, so you can do things like that if they celebrate that. These are all really, really great. I'll let everybody continue to add their thoughts in there. I'm just going to move on. I just wanted to see if people could think a little bit as well about how they could potentially use the C strategies in their room during the story acting part of this approach. So remember, the C strategies are share more, elaborate on what you see, explore with descriptive words, and then support the ending as well. So how could you encourage children to share more and elaborate on what they see while acting out stories, or maybe while you're describing what's kind of happening in the story if they're a little bit younger? How could you support the end of their stories? Ask open-ended questions. Yep, that's great. Play pretend with their story. Absolutely. If you have some resources in your room that you can use, that would be fantastic. Asking questions like what happened after that, that's absolutely perfect. Yeah. A round of applause for the end. Ask them what they think and write it down. When a child shows you something, add details and expand on it. We try a silly thing, changing the ending. I like that. I really like have older kids tell the actors what their favorite part was. Add rich words. For infants, follow their lead as they want to make different animal sounds. That's great because that's also introducing some sound letter connections. Tell me more about. That's such a good way to elaborate more, to get the child to share more. And then what happened? These are really, really great. Thank you all so much for sharing your ideas and reflections. So now, before we move on to recap the main points we discussed today, I do want to share some tips to keep in mind as you think of building storytelling and acting into your daily or weekly routines. This is something that came up when people were sharing, so I think it'll be really valuable. The first thing that I want to highlight is that, as I'm sure you know, children can express stories in very unique ways. Some stories might sound poetic, musical, or even unusual. That's perfectly okay. Let children share their story however feels right to them. The more freedom they have, the more creative they'll be. Another thing to remember is to use smaller notebooks to write down the child's story. What this does is it helps the child feel less pressured to create long stories. And it can also allow you to take their stories and put them in notebooks or share them with families a little easier if that's something that you decide to do. Finally, if you work with multilingual children, you may encounter something called translanguaging. This is when a child moves between languages. So a child might tell some of their story in one language and another part of their story in another language. If this happens, don't correct. Just spell out their story as best you can if you're not sure how to spell it. So if a child says part of their story in English and maybe another part in French, just spell it out as best you can. This slide here actually shows an example of a bilingual story from a child. This child is telling their story in Spanish and in English. The characters for the acting out part are circled within the story like we mentioned earlier. So there's a dragon, a dinosaur, a princess, knights, and a king. So as you can see, the educator also encouraged the child to draw out parts of their story, which is something that a lot of you mentioned. And this can really help build those early writing skills if children are at a place developmentally to do this. So this is also fantastic. So you can do this as well. So now I'm just going to pass it over to Liz to recap some of the key messages from today's session.
So first and foremost, we know that early literacy experiences are essential. Their early moments of engagement with books and language really lay that foundation for lifelong learning and success. And the skills that children develop in their early years have a profound impact on their future academic and personal achievements. Second, there are 5 key skills that all children need to become strong readers and writers in the early years. Third, creating and putting stories into action provides some of the richest opportunities for building those big 5 foundational early literacy skills. And through these activities, children are naturally exploring language, understanding, sounds, print, and early writing. And finally, what matters most is children are being surrounded with words and having fun. So the strategies that we talked about today don't require any extra materials or special activities. They really can be woven into your existing routines to spark meaningful conversations that boost language and comprehension skills in really engaging child-led ways. So we have those earlier questions that we talked to you about at the beginning, but we're going to look at them again with fresh eyes. So please think quietly to yourself and write things down for yourself as well. So how will you help children understand and learn language in your practice? Are there new strategies that you want to try or maybe even build on? How will you support children in telling their own stories during the day? And what opportunities will you give children to act out ideas or even pretend? So think about what feels exciting and what feels doable. And if you're feeling inspired, jot down one thing that you want to try this week. And remember, you're not doing this alone. We're all learning and growing together. So as we're wrapping up, we'd really love to stay connected. So you can feel free to follow CCLF on social media for news, updates, and information on our training workshops. So all our handles are listed here. So please feel free to follow us and stay engaged. We also have a short survey that we'd love for you to complete. It should only take about 3 to 5 minutes, and it helps us to improve our future workshops for amazing early years educators like yourselves. So we have the QR code on the screen here, and I'm also going to drop a link to the survey in the question box as well. So thank you so much for being here this evening. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. It was actually very inspiring. And although I haven't done frontline childcare in years, it made me want to run out and do it tomorrow. I think there's just so many great ideas you could take right from here and do it tomorrow in your practice. And that's exactly what we want to do with our webinars, is inspire the educators to take what they've learned and apply it right away. And it's just so user-friendly and accessible, the information you provided. And I just loved the fact that the kids and people were commenting that the tell a story bit and how the child in the video you showed just looked so pleased with himself and so confident and so respected, and that was amazing. That was just such a heartwarming moment. So thank you so much for providing us with this content, and we're very excited to have been able to share it with our members and beyond. And we will follow up with those certificates that will come by the end of the week, as I mentioned before, automatically. And also we will follow up with with an email just from ourselves with any additional information that we can send off as well. So we'll do that within the next couple of days as well. So thanks again. Thank you, Kaitlyn and Liz, for that amazing information. And thank everyone for joining us and taking part of your evening. And I can see everyone's loving it. I see lots of clapping hands and hearts. So that's all good. And thank you, Suzanne, for joining us today. Did anybody have anything else to add to close?
There are some hands up if you look in the top left
Yes.
corner. I was wondering if we could ask these people to enter their questions in the chat box, if that would be possible.
They could do that, or they could also send us an email if you had something that was ongoing that you wanted some response to that we may run out of time tonight. So you can, I put it in the chat earlier, you can send an email to webinars with an S at CCCF-FCSGE, and I'll put it in there again. And that's another way you can reach out to us after the webinar is over and after we've shut it all down, that you can still reach us if you have any questions or concerns. I'll put it in there again.
If anyone has any questions about the content we went over today, they can also email me. My email is just up on the screen right there, kparks@childrensliteracy.ca.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, thanks again for joining us, everyone. It was a great night, and we look forward to our next webinar together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. And thank you, everyone.